Hello and welcome to Tech Talk. Me, Anthea, will co-host for me, Kenton Milroy.
I must agree with you because you recall back in 2015 when Vanuatu was struck by Cyclone Pam, Category 5. Our telecommunication systems went down, electricity went down, water supply down, and the banking sector went through this massive disaster of trying to resurrect their systems again. So I must agree with you on the fact that controlling our data and the cost of controlling it. If we were to keep our data center within the country, I don't think we can achieve resilience to some extent. But outsourcing it on offshore data center, maybe in Singapore, Sydney, can be of a big economical benefit, especially during disaster.
Well, governments and enterprises actually are in the same business. In Australia, like it or not, I'm a customer of the Bank of Akamai. Now, I'm not really a customer of the Bank of Akamai, but when I go to my online bank and I peel apart all the layers, underneath it all are Akamai servers.
That's online.
Online. Akamai. Why? Why isn't my bank running its own online bank? And the answer is that the rest of the internet does have bad things. Vicious attacks, denial of service attacks.
Yeah.
And the scale of the threat is high.
True.
There are only a small number of enterprises, and Akamai is one of a number, who are big enough, whose job it is to protect digital assets against everything. It always has to be up. If it's good enough for my bank, it's good enough for any government or private enterprise that needs its assets protected and available no matter what.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, doing it all yourself is just incurring cost. And as you say, sometimes the disasters really bite. Having commercial solutions, and it's not necessarily Akamai, there are a number, but having commercial solutions that take you beyond that, and you start thinking, how do I make this stuff protected, resilient, always available, always there, no matter what? You start to think about folk who can offer you these solutions, yes. It's a different way of thinking, but I think, like I said, you've got to do what you can afford just as much as doing what you want.
Yes. Thanks for that. The next thing we want to touch base on is IPv6.
Right.
So you got all computers only connect lo unique IP, only connect lo unique numbers or IP address, whenever you call them. Most low computer systems you got own unique IP address and instable IPv4 or IP version 4. Geoff Huston, where me Chief Scientist lo APNIC, mo me one early pioneer lo internet technologies lo Pacific, Asia Pacific. And we write and plan the research about IP technologies, and one little interesting one maybe IP version 6 or IPv6. Geoff Huston, you've written a quite number of columns or articles online on IPv6. Some other people are also doing that. Is IPv6 only for the rich? I saw this YouTube video.
Yes, it certainly seems to be that way, and there's a lot behind this whole issue. When we first built the internet, and I'm going back even into the 1970s, the model that we had was the telephone network. Now it's a really simple model. Every phone set has a unique number. It just does. And the way my phone connects to your phone is I ring your number.
Yes.
You answer, we have a connection.
A unique number.
A unique number, and that drives the entire telephone system. So when we built the internet, we gave every computer a unique number.
Unique number.
And that way, any computer could ring any other computer that was connected to the internet. This seemed like a really good idea. Now, the only problem...
When you say ring, it metaphorically connect.
I could send you a packet, ring, and you would receive the packet. You pick up the handset.
Okay.
But any computer could talk to any other computer, because that's what the telephone network did. But the telephone network has an elastic numbering plan. Some people have 10 digits in their telephone number, some only have 3. When you go to computers, they're not that flexible. We all have the same sized number. Now, back in 1974...
And still unique.
Unique, but the size is very important.
Okay.
Now, back in 1974, when computers were the size of rooms and buildings, they designed a 32-bit wide field. That's a number between 1 and 4 billion. And the thinking at the time was, 4 billion computers? You're nuts. We'll never get there. But by 1990, when we started really rolling out the internet, but at the same time, computers were getting smaller and smaller and smaller, that 4 billion wasn't enough.
Can you consider mobile phones as computers?
Oh, they are. Reaches for mobile phone. It has an IP address, yes. And every single mobile phone, and there are a lot more than 4 billion, needed an address. So our thinking at the time was, well, it's simple. We just make a bigger address field.
Okay.
But we have to do a brain transplant of every computer to give it this new protocol. Even in 1990, that looked hard. And as we grew the internet and more V4 devices came out, it got harder and harder and harder. So at the same time as we developed this protocol that kind of did the old thing, being inventive people, we started hacking around. And one of the things that...
Ethical hacking.
Well, hacking in a very abstract sense, I suppose. Because we found that not everybody wants to be a server. So while my phone can access a website, I actually can't make this a web server.
True.
I can be a client, but I can't be a server. And if I divide the world into clients and servers, not every client needs to be called. They call, but they aren't called.
Okay.
Key observation. If all this does is initiate calls but never receives them, does it need its own unique number? No one calls it.
No one calls it.
I call people, but people don't call me. That's how we've done the impossible. We have got 30 billion computers connected to an internet in V4 that only uses 2 billion addresses. The trick is called address sharing. And you might find folk talking about network address translators or NATs. But everyone, every mobile provider, everyone on the planet, across their client networks, their mobile networks, their wired networks, typically uses shared addressing. That's how we've managed it. Does anyone notice? No.
No.
So if V6 was intended to solve a problem that seemed to be a problem in 1990, does it still solve the same problem today, or is it not a problem? Now, in some ways with technology, we kind of think there's only one answer, but that's not true. Technology is a conversation. Technology is about what are my choices, what's the best choice to make. There is no urgent need for any provider out there to say, I have to turn on IPv6 tomorrow. I can't give you a because. There is no because. You don't have to do it. We have a more subtle message about this, and it says, we've managed to cram 30 billion devices into 2 billion. This is good. Could we make 300 billion devices cram into the same 2 billion addresses? You'd be brave. At some point we see there's a cliff out there and we can't manage to get over that cliff. At some point, sooner or later, we've got to go there. If you're rich, you can afford to start going there sooner, because even if it's not the final answer, you can afford to make mistakes. You can afford to get some experience. You can afford that investment in the future, even if it's not a dead set certainty. If you aren't rich, maybe you should wait. Maybe that precious dollar you've got to spend on improving the experience for your customers, might well be spent on more bandwidth, more infrastructure, more service, and not necessarily on V6, because you don't have to do it tomorrow. So we see at the moment a world where about 1/4 of the world's internet users have V6. Great.
1/4.
But the other 3/4 don't, and they're not living a second-class life. They're living the same life.
Yeah.
So those who don't notice they don't. Those who do, oddly enough, don't notice they have it. It's so invisible to everyone.
Yes.
Now, as I said, we know in the fullness of time, everyone has to go there. But as usual with many technologies, if you're not forced to go there, and there are good things to do with your money, you don't have to go there today.
True.
So I suppose in some cases we've seen quite deliberate moves, even by what we thought were developing countries.
Yeah.
The largest pool of V6 users today is in India.
India,
which is quite surprising. It's not noted to be one of the world's richest countries. It's certainly one of the more populous, but that's not the same as rich. But that provider was kind of going, I'm going to roll out a radically different kind of mobile service, really cheap, and I want hundreds of millions of users.
Wow.
Big vision.
True.
And they decided at that point, let's build this and let's not change it for decades.
Okay.
Let's build it once and amortize the cost. I think that's what led them to go, well, if everyone who does it on V4 has to change at some point, and we intend to be really big, the cost of change at some point in the future is going to be high. If we roll out using 6 and put 4 at either point, tunnel across. The Americans started doing this. It seemed like a nice idea. They went, right, let's do it that way. So up comes the world's biggest V6 network, and it came up in 6 months.
Wow.
An amazing feat. So if I was building a new mobile network, almost anywhere on the planet, if it was new, I'd be sitting there going, I think I'm going to do it in 6 and tunnel 4, because that's logical.
Yes.
But if I'm already running a network, I don't have a real need to go to 6 tomorrow, and I probably won't. So the existing systems really are solving other problems today, and that's quite legitimate. Users are not missing out. The experience is the same. We're fine. But as I said, if I was doing a new one, if I wanted to compete with you, then I might go, I think I can do it cheaper, and I can do it over a longer period. I can basically out-compete you over the decades if I use 6. And that's perfectly fine.
Thanks for that. It's a big challenge.
Oh, totally, yes.
And it's a very new field, like you stated very clearly, that it's a big feat you have to take, and it's you're going towards a cliff, but you have to be strategically navigating your way into ensure that what you are doing in terms of money on the 6 is, you got a return on it. Let me ask you this last question. What do you notice when you walk up and down, north to south, east and west, among the Pacific Island, or among the Pacific? And then when you meet people in the Pacific, what is the trend of technology? What is the trend of internet? I know you come across some government people, some enterprise people, and some people within your circle of scientific study and research on internet technologies, IP technologies. What is the trend that Pacific is going towards?
Well, there are a number of communities in the Pacific that were a part of this almost from the start. So you take Hawaii. The University of Hawaii was one of the pioneers in the early Ethernet, AlohaNet. And there's a body of folk who are really on top of this, and the university's on top of it. The kids are on top of it. They are, I suppose, in a digital sense, as much a part of the mainland United States as any other part, if not more so. You take Australia and New Zealand, who were communities who were radically isolated from what they thought was their parent countries. You know,
Yeah.
here is a community of Anglophiles in Australia, and England's on the other side of the world. Their isolation was keen. And because their isolation affected them, when they got technologies that made communication plentiful and cheap,
Yes.
it, I think, transformed our view of ourselves. So you found that those three areas, together with Singapore and Japan, were very rapid adopters. So rapid that many other countries, and I start with Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Tonga, and so on, were actually wondering what was going on. And what has happened since then is that they've kind of got this two-speed economy, the economy of tourism, which brings in money, in many cases the only money.
True.
But they look at their communities and go, digitally, we have these massive issues that folk who come, our banks, our companies and so on, they're expensive, they differentiate, we don't enjoy the service that other people do. Your kids leave. Even in New Zealand, they leave. They either go to Australia or the west coast of America because of opportunity. This is soul destroying and gut wrenching. How do we create opportunities in those areas? I mentioned Fiji earlier, and I'm keen to see you and happy to see you observe that you think Fiji is now out of this hole. That it's a place where you can live. You do have opportunities digitally. You can be employed by others and do work because your communication system is cheap, abundant, you know, and works. The rest of the Pacific, I think, is now on the cusp of this with cable projects. You need to have internet access that costs consumers $10 a month. That's a tenth of what I pay at the moment in Australia. But once you get it down to that point where it's incidental, people use it in a way that it should be used without thinking of the cost. And after the entertainment's come and gone, after the Netflix has come and gone, ultimately it's a case of, can I do work for that company over there? Can I be productive with them? Can I almost be my own gig economy in a global market? And if I want 15-year-olds to be 25-year-olds inside that community, and I don't want them to fly out on the next plane, I want to offer them a world-class education where they are. I don't know of any other way we can do this, but I do know we can do it this way, and we should do it this way. The whole idea of the University of the South Pacific spanning a number of countries and actually looking at how they do it digitally is, I think, an amazingly good way of thinking about this problem. Because if we don't do that, the islands are going to be a bunch of 70-year-olds feeling sad that all their kids have left. And that's not a future any of us were prepared to see. So, to my mind, it's a this generation problem, it's a now problem. It's a problem we, as the communities in the South Pacific, need to tackle head on and try and help. And I think, like roads and bridges helped a decade ago, a century ago, digital infrastructure is the one thing you can start with. If you don't have that, nothing else works. But once you do have that, a whole new world of possibilities just opens up. And you should go there as fast as you can.
Christopher Columbus went around the globe, but in this era, the playing field is flattened because of technology. And Geoff Huston, we are very happy to have you on the show, and we hope to meet you again sometimes and then chat about cool technology development in the Pacific. Now I'm in this exclusive interview with Geoff Huston, Chief Scientist of APNIC, one early pioneer of internet technology development law Asia Pacific. Special episode by uploaded on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and also TikTok.tv website. Thank you too much for start with me.